Well, this morning we have a guest with us. This is Mr. Bunny. He's got a tail and spina bifida, and he's one of our cool cats. I know a lot of you guys often ask about the many pets you see in our videos, so I just thought I'd do a quick introduction. Anyways, let's move on to the main topic. So my name is Jay. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com, and we work with a bunch of clients throughout the year in all 50 states to help them navigate the system. And today is all about Seniors Day. I made it my own state holiday, and I think that in terms of people that are 55 and older and 62 years and older, you need to really understand what your options are in terms of what's out there. Many of you are trying to learn what would be the best way to navigate the system, what the open options are. So I want to discuss that today a little bit. So most of you that are seniors or from one way or another have learned that Section 8 as a program, which has been around for about 80 years, offers a multitude of options for all ages and all disabilities and other circumstances. And for you guys, you have a couple of roads you can travel, which would kind of help you find housing and also potentially use a subsidized unit as well as a voucher. So Section 202, which is basically a federal program that allows those that are age 62 and older that have a disability or other health-related issues and have difficulties, you're able to apply for what we call, it's commonly known as affordable housing. It's also called low-income housing and so on. And the federal administrator for that, or the people that have an agreement with the U.S. government, is going to be affordable housing online. And so you don't need a voucher for those type of properties. They're sub-designated to accept you if you're 62 and older and you have a disability, and they also without disability. It also offers wraparound resources. In other words, you don't have to have people come to your door and beat on it and knock on it and offer you things, but it's there if you want it. They can offer anything from assistance with down payment assistance, furniture, Meals on Wheels, and many other things, including your mental health care as well as physical well-being, as well as counseling. So there's a number of issues that can be addressed through wraparound resources if you want that. If not, then just graciously decline. But for the most part, it allows you to subsidize. So that means that 30% of your fixed income, Social Security check, retirement benefits, railroad fund, whatever it may be, would be paid towards the rent, and then the rest would be subsidized through the local housing authority. Now, in order to qualify, there's only a couple of factors that need to be considered, and that is A, your age, and whether or not B, you have enough income in order to be able to rent a low-income property, which again is low-income property, affordable housing, a subsidy, or LITCH, a tax credit property. They're all the same thing. It's just that the news has made it many different things over the years. Second to that, for those of you that are seniors that have served in the United States military and Coast Guard and have honorably been discharged or discharged for other causes that were not negative, then you could participate in HUD Bash. Now, again, all the topics I'm covering are going to be in the description. So and I encourage you, because you need to learn first, the power of all this is for your ability to be able to see what the federal definitions are and have the appropriate contacts. And so for each topic we're covering in this video, you can take a look, do a little bit of research, and then decide how to reach out. So HUD Bash is for veterans that have served and have been honorably discharged for one reason or another. And that BASH program can cover up to 125% of the rent. So your BASH vouchers tend to be actually a little bit more in demand from landlords because there's a higher payment standard for them. So you veterans out there, you should consider this as an option. And you don't need to be exclusively a homeless veteran in order to participate in HUD Bash. So how do you access that? You can access that through a representative that works at the PHA that's specific to the HUD Bash program, or you can go to your Veterans Association locally. Now, I'm going to give you a few tips regarding that. If you live in a smaller area and not a big metropolitan city, it may be easier to deal with your Veterans Association. However, if you live in a big city, it may be easier to just deal with the housing authority versus the big VA. Okay, so the only differences here is which is going to be bigger and smaller. Big cities go to the PHA, and the smaller cities go to your Veterans Association. It means you'll be treated with a little bit more dignity and respect. Now, moving on from that, you have mainstream vouchers, which means that by virtue of you filling out your application, you're indicating your income and also your age on there, then you will be selectively granted a mainstream voucher to use in any property, whether private or so on. And so that allows you to be able to rent from houses, apartments, trailers, rent a room if need be. And so that allows you, again, the 70-30 rule, which is 30% of your income received. So if you deposit your check in your account, 30% of that amount, and they're going to cover the other 70% for you. Now, moving on from there, we need to talk in a little bit more about disability and how this could be a little bit a mixed or blurred line. If you're suffering from things like dementia, or you have a relative or a family member you're trying to help that has dementia or another issue where they're not so much connected to reality, then it's important to understand that Medicare Medicaid may offer a program that will subsidize part of the income. So it's no longer kind of a HUD issue and housing and a housing authority. So we need to make sure that they don't need that they're not needing end-stage care, or they're not in a position where they're not seeing reality. That would be more of a different federal agency. But for those seniors that are still have their faculties together and you're not suffering from dementia and other issues, then I think it would be appropriate also to deal with mainstream vouchers, HUD Bash, and of course your subsidies. And again, I want to make a distinction. It's one thing to own a voucher and one a subsidy. So let's talk about what would be the wisest decision in terms of both. So one situation, you're doing the housing authority application and you're receiving a voucher. That voucher comes with portability. You can move it anywhere in the country. So if you get too old, then you can move out to your children's house, rent next to them, and move across the country. For those of you considering subsidies and funding are attached specifically to the building. So when that landlord agrees to engage in agreement with the federal government to receive tax credit, he allocates a number of units. Those units are thus then funded with subsidy. When you move in, you're subsidized. Unfortunately, when you take you and your possessions out of that apartment, you're no longer subsidized, and the whole search starts again. So unless you're fully sure that you're going to remain there, to avert being a gigantic pain in your bottom, do not engage in dealing with subsidies, because that's really for people that are extremely old and you're fairly certain you're going to stay there. For those of you that got lots of life to live and you're looking for a safe and decent community, then I would recommend vouchers. Okay, not Section 202. I would recommend the voucher, and you can choose it. You don't need wraparound resources unless you're extremely elderly. There's a difference between being a senior and being elderly. A senior is somebody with a whole lot of life. In other words, you're not 90 yet, okay? Or your care and health are still pretty good. Now, moving on from there, for those of you that are seniors that are living on the edge or on the fringe, in other words, you're nearing the risk of homelessness. Rents have become so high, your fixed income, your Social Security checks just isn't enough to cover things, and you're fairly close to potential homelessness, or you're already there, or you're even surfing couches. Then there's a fourth road that we can travel, and that would be the Continuum of Care program. Now, that is the name of the program, Continuum of Care, better known as COC. Now, looking at Continuum of Care, rather than you filling out an application, you're contacting the agency. It's not the housing authority, it's the Continuum of Care program agency. And they're going to ask you all the questions, and you'll answer verbally rather than giving a written application. And in that case, they will determine your age, your income, and other statuses and preferences with disability and so on. And that they may be able to offer or issue a number of things, but generally they're going to offer you either an emergency housing voucher, if applicable, but mainly there's a different type of voucher they issue, mainly the seniors, and there's a permanent supportive housing. So when you hear the word permanent supportive housing, since it's a different system, it's technically Section 202. Okay, that's all it really is. It's just a different name through a different agency, but it does the same thing. You're being vouchered to go to a private landlord that's likely going to be a senior designated property, and you're utilizing it there. So the only difference is you're not dealing with the housing authority, you're dealing with nonprofits that receive federal dollars. Now, that's not also including other options where the state may be funding other programs Now, many of you know when you go to the housing authorities are not federal employees. They are not HUD. HUD is the people that investigates bad activities and breaking of federal laws. They are also the people that disperse federal funds to the housing authority. Housing authorities, thus, are privately owned or owned by the city, and their workers there qualify people for vouchers, including seniors. Now, once you understand that concept, now let's jump back over to subsidies, low income housing, and affordable housing, meaning all the same thing. It means it is a private landlord that is receiving tax credits. You go not to the housing authority to get a voucher, but you're going to that property to qualify as low income. And if they have a sub designation of their property, meaning that they are a Section 202 property, then it means it's a senior's property. And you go and you can apply, you see your income, and then you can join the other seniors there, whether they're seniors or considerably elderly. Okay. Now, those of you that have serious crisis health and other things, or you may not have the most firm grip, or your family member doesn't have firm grip in reality, you may need to migrate your case to Medicare, Medicaid, where there's a potential for assisted living, nursing care, and so on. That's not really funded by HUD, and we certainly cannot have people participating in a federal program where they're supposed to be obviously be able to handle their own business. Okay. This is for people who are somewhere in between in that gray area where you could still function, live on your own, maybe even have a care aide to help you clean and do other tasks around the house. But it's not for people that are suffering from dementia and other things where they're completely disconnected from reality and unable to care for themselves adequately. Now, let's talk about, again, the 30-70 rule. You want to keep that in mind. Now, 30% of your received income is your responsibility, and again, 70% will be subsidized through the housing authority. So how much is the housing authority or the low income property going to cover? Well, that 70% it'll be determined essentially by your housing authority or that property, the maximum rent line that you can get. So those of you that have, say, a Social Security or fixed income of around 4 to say 800, you're considered on the low side. 900 to 1500, you're considered in the medium range, and 1600 all the way up to about 3500, you're considered in the high range. So depending on those numbers, the better the type of properties you'll likely be able to deal with. Now, I want you to dismiss what you may think you know about assisted living and these type of properties. Due diligence is always required. Nobody's asking seniors to move in project-based housing. So let's cover that so we can dispel rumors. Housing authorities, as you know, have a couple of options they issue people as an option. And one is, if the housing authority gives you a voucher, it means you have the choice to utilize a voucher wherever. It doesn't matter when you move in somebody's private home, then it's a senior's property. If you want it, you're there, right? I mean, you've made it a senior's property. Now, if the housing authority decides to offer you project-based, it means the housing authority is not only going to be issuing you a voucher, but they own the property. I'll give you some warnings about that. If the housing authority is both the person that is qualifying you for a voucher, and now you're also going to make them the landlord, you're going to make it exceptionally hard to complain about anything, because any guff out of you regarding any issue, remember that they're not just issuing you the voucher, they're also your landlord. And of course, we've heard many things through the news in the 80s about project-based housing. I think they've done somewhat better job in many areas of the country, but I think that it still is ugly as it can be in the bigger cities. So it's worth a look if you're in an area or a population center of less than 500,000. But if you're 500,000 or over, I don't think the project-based housing would be appropriate for anybody. And even if it's in a small town, you have to question whether or not you're putting yourself in a geographical area where there may be a higher propensity for crime, drug activity, prostitution, and other things. Because if you're unable or too scared to go check your own mail or going after dark, then you're in the wrong type of property. And let's discuss some of the realities of properties, whether you're using a voucher or a subsidy or you're HUD bashed. You can always put lipstick on a pig. For those of you that are old enough to understand what I mean by that, there are lots of people that take clever and beautiful pictures of a building. They'll even give you pictures of a low-income property that photo was taken 20 years ago when it was pretty and nice. Look, let me give you some advice, guys. You need to look at the reputation of the building. You need to go and visit there on a Saturday night or a Sunday night, drive by there and see if everybody's out there smoking crack or acting crazy. Don't just believe things. Don't just believe what they're selling you, because we've all been rented something at some time, and the first thing the leasing agent wants to do is show you the pool. I'm not renting the pool, lady. Show me the apartment, and I'd like to see some of these neighbors. I like to know what's going on. So you can learn a lot by how well the property is being kept up by looking around, touring the property, and then trying to visit there on your own time on a weekend, so you see how things go down at night and on the weekend when people are out moving around. If it isn't safe then it's not going to be safe. And don't presume just because it's a property full of seniors. I got to be honest, we deal with thousands of people every year through our company, doing casework, helping them navigate the system, or even consulting them. I've got lots of people that are up in age that are still doing things they shouldn't, that have drug addiction, that are still, unfortunately, doing prostitution and other things. So don't just presume the property is going to be good and Christian because everybody's 80 there. It's not true. People still get down when they're old, no matter how old they get. So I hate to put it out there that way, and maybe it seems a little bit tasteless, but my job is to make sure that you understand what's happening, whether it offends you or not. Nobody wants to sugarcoat this. So, vouchers, subsidies, Section 202 properties, assisted living, COC programs for those that are too low income and probably have an insufferable situation. Those are really the only four roads you're going to be traveling in this reality of trying to house yourself or a loved one. I think the best move in most cases is to seek out a voucher, because while a senior property is great, if you discover later you move into a subsidy and you've got a neighbor that has mental health problems that bangs on walls all night, then this could be a situation where it's difficult for you to get out of that lease. You're stuck in the property. And when you move out, you're going to start this whole ridiculous process to apply again. And look, Section 202 properties and subsidies and low-income housing are often on the wait list. So you're waiting to get in, then you get out, and then you got to wait again. And so unless you can afford to hang out at hotels while you get approved for another property, a voucher would offer you the ability within 30 days to port or move the voucher anywhere in the nation. And so it becomes a better option in terms of movability and not having to risk so much in between each lease. So, guys, I'm going to close out the video with just a few introductions. For those of you that are struggling with the system, you've got a loved one, a family member, so on, you're struggling to navigate the system, get housing, deal with a voucher, understand how things work, try to resolve maybe a plan to work on your case. It may be worth a little bit of your time to get with our company, book an appointment if you like. Our company and the services we offer should be a last resort. If you've done everything you can for either yourself as a senior or those that you love, and it's yielded no result, or you're running out of time, then and only then would be a good time or appropriate time to reach out to a professional to see whether or not you can speed up the timeline, if there's better options out there. And despite there being 4 roads, there are still many, many options that can be open. Everybody's case is very individual. So is the amount of time they have. And so I got to tell you that often if one road or path is closed, then there may be an opportunity to open up another, depending on what it is. And that's not even with full disclosure of both state and county programs. So we're only discussing federal programs at this point. There are others that it could be considered in a tight situation or a difficult or unusual situation. While I'd love to carry on for 10 hours in this video, I don't think most people want to watch a middle-aged man sit there and carry on. So I'm going to leave it at that as the opening point of this. We'll revisit seniors again and housing and talk a little bit more in depth once I see the line of questioning that most of you would have. Otherwise, I would say if you simply don't have the time or energy, or your health, physical or mental health, doesn't permit you to be able to help yourself, then maybe that would be a good time to reach out to a professional. My name is Jay. I am the owner of section8consulting.com, and we look forward to, I and our staff look forward to speaking to you if you have an issue that we can address. Thank you for your time, and you have a great day. Bye-bye.